It's 2017, but a lot of people want games that take place in 517. I'm Falcon, and today on gameranx, here's the top 10 medieval games of 2017. Number 10, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. This is a game you're going to want to look out for if you're a fan of Ninja Theory, the studio behind Heavenly Sword and the severely underrated DMC Devil May Cry. I know, maybe a slightly controversial opinion, but that game is great. The story of the game is based in Celtic mythology. You'll be playing the part of Senua, who is fighting her way through an underworld made up of psychotic manifestations from her own reality and mind. The game is an action game of the hack and slash variety. As I said, I enjoyed DMC, so I'm looking forward to where they go with this one. Ninja Theory has been pretty proud about the fact that they are developing and publishing this as an independent game, but that it will maintain AAA production values, and let's face it, on Heavenly Sword alone, I'm quite interested. Number 9 is Graveyard Keeper, which is marketed as the most inaccurate medieval cemetery management sim of 2017. I'm gonna have to go and say probably the only one in the running. Of note is the particularly nice pixel art graphics that in some ways, such as the water and elemental effects, goes for a slightly realistic look, but in other ways still goes for a stylized retro look. The game is a criticism of capitalism. I mean an expression of capitalism, in which you build and manage your own graveyard while finding shortcuts to cut costs, expand into the entertainment industry with witch-burning festivals, for instance, and scare nearby villagers into attending church. There's the standard features such as resource management, crafting, and what you might expect from this type of game in the type of business alliances you can create, as well as various ethical dilemmas that kind of tell you a little bit about how our economic system works. The one I particularly like from the game's press materials involves where the hot dog meat for the festival comes from. Is it that grade A real hot dog meat, or is it the resources that you've cultivated in your business of a graveyard? This game looks like it's going to be funny, as well as very relevant to our society today, and frankly, I can't wait. Number 8 is Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord, which serves as a prequel to Mount and Blade. Actually happens 200 years prior. We've covered this game a few times, it's been a long time coming, and because the original was actually so good and so was the expansion, we feel like it's worth mentioning again. Now, the first and most noticeable thing about this game is how much better the graphics are than the original, which even for the time period it came out in were nothing to write home about, but it was a great game that drew from a lot of influences that I personally think came together to create something very good, and the Elite games. The developers are actually on record citing a lot of other influences as well, but I'm quite interested in it as it chronicles the downfall of the Chaldean Empire, which is pretty much symbolic of the Roman Empire, and that's always great historic material to cover in a video game or any other kind of entertainment, really. Frankly, it's a series that really needed updating because it's a lot of fun, but wasn't quite up to the quality standards of the time, and I think that this is when they're going to get it right, and really what they were going for, I think, deserves the chance, because it played really well, but a lot of people think it never really got the attention it deserved. Let's hope that has changed this time around. Number 7 is Vikings: Wolves of Midgard, which is an action RPG from the long-standing Vikings series, and they've done a really good job of bringing the whole thing into a modern era without fundamentally changing the type of thing they're going for. Now, it doesn't have a fully isometric view. The game does actually retain some perspective, but it keeps that top-down feel. That being said, the graphics are remarkable. The animation is really smooth, very realistic, and looking at it, it may give Diablo an actual run for its money. Now, in going with the fact that it is a Diablo competitor, it does have online co-op for 2 people, 4 difficulty levels, one of them being called Hardcore, so I'm assuming pretty tough. We aren't quite there yet, but if you're interested in hack and slashes, this game really looks to be one of the better ones coming out in the next long period of time. So if they follow through, if it is as good as it looks, there's a lot to be excited about because it looks really good. Number 6 is Styx: Shards of Darkness. It's the third game set in a fictional world of a series called Of Orcs and Men. which gives you a bit of an idea of what you can expect going in. Not a whole lot of orc-oriented games are not high fantasy, but also not too many of them focus exclusively on stealth. The titular character, Styx, has to infiltrate the dark elven city of Krognar and try to find out why the dwarves and the dark elves have formed an alliance. Now, there's a lot of interesting powers in the game, including turning invisible, cloning, laying traps, and if you really want to, you can engage enemies. It's not as though you have to do stealth and that's the only thing you can do, but it is primarily a stealth game. There's ropes, grappling hooks, lots of interesting tools. Frankly, it's a very cool looking title with a lot of style. Number 5 is Eitr, which is a very stylistically cool looking action RPG that looks, in my opinion, to be somewhere between Dark Souls and Hyper Light Drifter. Now, these are two games that I think are fantastic and have been awaiting the blank meets blank style game for quite a while. Now, there's no guns like Hyper Light Drifter, but the style sensibilities are there. Although the look is a little bit more gritty than Neon 80s, it does make me feel pretty much the same on account. I mean, it's really high quality pixel art with some great effects as well. The combat is very shield oriented. You feel a very Dark Souls feel from it. It has a similar pace to it. You have your wind-ups, your recovery times, your recoils, and it looks every bit like it brings that element of strategy to an action RPG that Dark Souls does. But it doesn't look like a clone, it definitely appears to have a style. There's, for instance, a lot more color in it, although it's very dark still. Eitr takes place in a mythological, Norse-oriented world, and it has the potential to be something really special if you ask me. Number 4 is Northgard, a combo strategy / settlement oriented game that feels in some ways like a more simplified Civilization or 4X type game, with some elements from Stronghold maybe a little bit of Age of Empires, except I have to say the graphical style I just love. It reminds me of a Super Nintendo game if they could be 3D and cartoony instead of only pixelated. They've got a color palette that just reminds me so much of that era though. But most likely nothing like this ever came out on the Super Nintendo. It's obviously a little bit more detailed in what it's going for than you could probably play on a controller. It's still in early access, it should hit later in the year. They're currently adding more and more features and content, and although the game doesn't have a story mode just yet, any kind of campaign, it is being called intuitive repeatedly wherever I hear it mentioned, so once it gets around to adding those types of things, it should really be, at very least, unique, but I think it's probably going to be quality. Number 3, it's Middle-earth: Shadow of War, which is the sequel to Shadow of Mordor, and various controversies aside, that game was actually pretty fun, which, I don't know about you, that's why I play games. Hopefully they handle the marketing of the game a little bit better, but the thing I liked particularly about that game was the Nemesis system, and it is expanded upon to apply to a much larger world. As a subsystem of the Nemesis system, there's now something called the Follower system. Various non-player characters will behave differently based on how you've behaved with them. So it's not just enemies that deal with you differently based on your actions, it's also friendly people. The reason why I care about this sequel coming out is honestly just the fact that it's a sequel to a game with some really compelling combat. I don't know if you know this by now, I am a hack and slash fan, and I'm happy that they're bringing more of an action RPG approach to this one. I'm hoping they don't change the combat too much, but the staff of the game is calling it the Terminator 2 to the original game's Terminator, meaning we all need to expect a lot out of it. Hopefully they deliver on that. It's a big promise to say the very least. Number 2 is Kingdom Come Deliverance, which is an open world classless RPG. The game is a fully single-player experience with branching quest lines and supposedly highly interactive, emergent gameplay. Now, I place emphasis on that term because it's probably one that's going to be coming up more and more. They've been talking about it for a few years, but you haven't really actually heard developers selling their games specifically on emergent gameplay, and if this game pulls it off, I'm sure you'll probably hear it a million other times. Even if it doesn't, again, people like Ken Levine use this term, and it's kind of a take on somewhere between algorithmic gameplay, like procedurally generated content, except for the content isn't the world. It's events and supposedly even actions. The game takes place in first person, and the combat mechanics mechanics are actually pretty cool sounding. They've used bone systems and physics in order to determine the momentum of the characters, and supposedly that momentum is the basis of the combat, which you would start with a variety of basic combat moves and then unlock more by skill tree, as well as add different weapons. Now, it's a big open world game with a lot going on, but ultimately your quest will be to restore the rightful ruler to the throne in order to save the country. In theory, this sounds like it could be a disaster or one of the best games of the year. We'll see. And finally, number 1, For Honor is a game that is already out and I would recommend playing it. Some people have varying opinions on it, but I've got to say, it's enjoyable to say the very least. There's both a single player and a multiplayer campaign, but the real attraction is the battle based on the various different factions: Knights, Samurai, and Vikings. This isn't a classless game. There are various classes, and they're well distributed and balanced in the types of fighting style and weapons that they have, as well as an interesting hybrid class. It has a complex plot that there is actually quite a lot of summary already out on the internet on. I'm gonna go ahead and say you probably can't have it spoiled just due to the complexity of it. You need to experience these things in order to understand them, because it's not so much about intra-character stuff, more about factions, rulers, power, all that type of stuff. This is more of a hack and slash than an action RPG, but it does have elements that will keep RPG fans coming back. I don't want to necessarily say that fans of either genre should not give it a try, because I think they should. I think there's a lot to like here, and I think the main reason why it's gotten some interesting mixed opinions is due to the fact that it does try to be more than one thing. And in my opinion, it does it pretty well. Which medieval games are you looking forward to this year? Hit the comments section up and let us know. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and if you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so. You will receive brand new videos every day of the week, because that's how often we upload them. Thank you so much for watching this one. My name is Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter @FalconTheHero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.